Hello, and welcome to part 3 of my research on the Pelacaras. This is a master thesis I found on the topic. The text is an academic article titled The Gringos and Headcutters by Salima Cure Valdivieso. It explores the Amazonian rumor of the cortacabezas, headcutters, associated with foreigners, particularly in the context of the Amazonian trapeze, a tri-border area between Colombia, Brazil, and Peru. The author aims to represent and interpret the local perspective on their encounters with gringos, and how these interactions are woven into the fabric of local identity and social relations. Here the author assumes the whole story is a local legend, but I will explain why I think it's more than that. This is an AI translation from Spanish, so it's not perfect, but you will understand the main points. Here are the most interesting parts of the article.
The rumor of headcutters has been circulating for some time now, approximately since the late 80s, and talks about some lights that are seen in the sky, associated with gringos and head extraction activities. Anthropologist, Master in Amazonian Studies at the National University of Colombia, Leticia campus. This article is part of the master's thesis. Be careful, your head is dirty. Circulation and construction of a rumor on the Amazon border of Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. National University of Colombia, Leticia campus, 2005. Unpublished. Of Gringos and Cortacabezas by Salima Cure Valdivieso. According to what people said, these headcutters first walked on land. They moved and followed people in their farms and roads. Now, they appear in the water or in the air, equipped with special suits, dollars, knives, lockpicks, liquids, and powerful machines that allow them to fly, illuminate and chase people, paralyze them, and finally extract their heads or some other things. Organs that will be used, according to people, to give life or invigorate the old, weak, and tired bodies of the gringos. The category of the gringo configures in this rumor the very essence of the headcutter, but this does not necessarily refer to an American citizen, but to the foreigner who comes from afar, who is not from the region, is not a paisan, nor a mestizo, has light eyes, white complexion, he does not speak Spanish or Portuguese well, and above all, he has high-tech machines and great power with which he extracts vital substances from people. But, as we will see later, those who are seen as headcutters may not necessarily be gringos. Thus, on rare occasions, if not always, people comment that countrymen and mestizos are working with the gringos cutters, and are seen as such as cutters.
In the interview with Talia, the girl they tried to kidnap in part 1, you remember she was talking about 2 assailants. One of them was talking the local dialect. In this thesis, the author describes how some of the locals were helping the headcutters or facepeelers.
These characters dedicated to the extraction of indigenous fat were known as pishtacos, grease extractors, oil extractors, mantiqueros, oilers, or extractors. It is believed that this grease was used as a lubricant so that the gringos' planes could fly without making noise. Some believe that they are precisely the luminous devices they use today. The period of removing the faces seems to be later than that of the fat, although some referred to it at the same time. These faces, it is said, were used to perform plastic surgeries, for the rejuvenation of those who could acquire them, to make masks that would camouflage the true identity of someone who committed a crime, or to make the faces of dolls and clowns that paraded in Lima on December 25th. Already, in more recent years, we said the end of the 80s, Gabriela and Don Faustino explained, the gringos took out the heads of dead people, of people buried in cemeteries. Then they took them from a number of living people. Generally, when people begin to tell their experience or their story of headcutters or headboards, as they are commonly called, they mention the colored lights that we have already mentioned. However, a good part of those interviewed have indicated that they previously attacked and appeared in another way. First, they attacked by land, they chased people along the roads and farms, and when people began to realize, they fled or killed them. Then there was a change. They began to walk along the river, as Don Leandro told me. They would think that it was easier to chase fishermen who were alone.
In part 1, I mentioned that Timothy Alberino had posted a video of a local fisherman with his face peeled off. His skull was clean. The video was taken down because of its disturbing nature and breaking the rules of the video platforms. The master thesis is talking about a newspaper headline.
The headline, Pelacaras, appears on October 9th, published on the front page of a local newspaper on February 21, 2005, is evidence of that. Although the news does not give much information, the description of the alleged Pelacara is that of a foreigner.
I don't think the newspaper would publish something that was just part of local mythology. This is another evidence that this is more than a legend.
They continued their activities by boat, following those who fished alone at night. In fact, there is a ship that always appears related to headcutters. It is a Peruvian tourist boat that runs a route from Santa Rosa to Iquitos, which, according to Don Tomas, was already seen in Iquitos in the 70s, and whose owner is apparently a gringo. As it has been described to me, it is a large white 3-story ship that has all the comforts for tourists. According to Don Leandro, this ship stops in some parts known as red zones, since that is where they do their misdeeds. That is, where the canoes leave from there to pursue the indigenous people, cut off their heads, and return to load them on the boat. It is also said that this ship was detained years ago by the Peruvian police because apparently severed indigenous heads were found inside. Other versions say that the ship was attacked and set on fire by residents of a community when they realized that it was full of human heads. At the end of the 90s, closer to the year 2000, the attack and pursuit tactics of the headcutters began to become more sophisticated and technical, and therefore more terrifying. There is thus talk of countless devices, liquids, lights, and disguises, of which the best known, and which almost everyone talks about, is a vehicle that is seen in the sky at night, giving off rays of lights of different colors. Some say that it doesn't sound at all, others that it sounds only a little. The idea is that it is a device that does not make much noise. Remember the relationship that was made with human fat extracted as lubricant so that flying vehicles would not produce noise. Don Faustino explained to me that in that device there are computers and powerful communication equipment that allows them to quickly locate their victims and know if they are armed or not. Their movements are made visible by the lights they have, when they change location, size, and color between red, blue, yellow, and green tones. These lights, described as giant reflectors, are believed to be used as a laser beam or shock beam, useful for immobilizing people and easily trapping them. Some have said that the headcutters descend from their devices and at that very moment carefully cut and remove the heads and organs of the people they have paralyzed. In other cases, they kidnap them and take them to their laboratories. The image we have of these places is similar to those of the coca laboratories of drug traffickers in the 1980s, or bases. It is said that this complete head that includes heart, liver, kidneys, viscera, and lately, even sexual organs, despite having been removed, is still alive because the gringos have machines and apparatus, incubators, and liquids, formaldehyde, vaccines, chemicals, special waters, that allow him not to die. Thus, the heart continues to beat. The eyes move, even, Don Bonifacio said. They cry, suddenly remembering what happened, because it is still the same person here.
I found a post on 4chan talking about something similar. People think they want to see the evidence. I get so sick of seeing these hopeful, naive numbskulls on Reddit and shit talk about how humanity is ready, or almost ready to learn. No. No, the fuck you are not. I wish I hadn't learned. The problem is that people want sexy evidence like long, clear HD videos of ships in flight, or maybe even a recording of a NHI speaking. But we only have a handful of the former, and only one of the latter. And trust me, nobody wants to hear what it, apparently, said. We don't have any preserved alien corpses or whatever. We have a ton of radar and sonar blips, thousands of personal testimonies, but people will shrug at that. We have a few images of the aquatic structure, but nothing that some jaded hipsters won't laugh off as Photoshop. The real best evidence we have are thousands of images of corpses, not just skinned and drained like the cattle mutilations, but contorted, warped, transformed into impossible concoctions of flesh and organs. Weird metallic devices plugged into open wounds and mouths. We have video of a completely mangled headless corpse found in the woods, next to a brain, and its attached eyes resting on a 4-foot metallurgic tub of some goo. It had needle-like objects suck into it that were automatically injecting the goo into the brain. The brain and eyes had no decomposition. An electroencephalography showed the brain was somehow still alive. We have no idea how long it was out there, or what, if anything, it was feeling or seeing. Do people seriously want us to put that on fucking 60 Minutes? We're ready for disclosure. You think everyone, anyone, will be able to keep it cool once they've seen it? Nobody keeps their cool once they've seen it. These things, whatever the fuck their motives, are fucking horrific, and every signal points towards an impending invasion. I can't emphasize this enough. We are detecting them every night now. Not one or two. Dozens. Please take it fucking seriously. The headcutters disguise themselves, wearing an animal costume and acting as such. The costumes of the headcutters vary depending on whether they walk on water or on land. They can be made of leather or animal skin, but always provided with a device that allows the person inside to breathe. Recognizing that it is a gringo in disguise and not a real animal, people say, is achieved because the gringo does not act as the animal he is disguised as behaves. For example, Gabriela told me that when a dolphin is threatened with an arrow, he runs away, while if it is about cabeceros disguised as a dolphin, they, on the contrary, get closer to the canoe, hitting it and trying to make the fisherman fall.
It is said that the gringos have been fought. Traps have been played on them with dolls that pretend to be fishermen, or with mirrors, so that the beam of light is returned to them and they attack themselves. They have been threatened and other times injured, discovered under their suits, murdered and robbed of their money. It was common to point out that those who kill the gringos and take their money go to live in Manaus or Iquitos, in big cities, because they already have all the money they need and they don't have to work anymore.
The indigenous people tried to contact the president of Colombia asking for help. This is another proof that this is not just a local myth. Those people wouldn't write an official letter to the president about something that was just a part of their mythology.
For example, on January 18, 2005, the president of ACITAM, Association of Indigenous Councils of the Amazonian Trapeze, addressed a letter to the president of Colombia, Álvaro Uribe Vélez, to expose, among other issues, the problem of the violation of human rights by part of something known as headcutters. This is what it says in a section of the letter. In this area, the indigenous people have been suffering violations of various kinds. Here, it is not violence and war. I want to note that my fellow indigenous fishermen, for approximately 3 years, have felt persecuted by someone, and that someone people have called headcutter, and more than one fisherman in this sector has escaped from that persecution, and that is why at this time the fishermen are armed for security and personal defense and in groups. But nevertheless, it has not disappeared until now. We ask the state and the national government to assume responsibility for carrying out a pertinent investigation into this case through the competent authorities.
The locals think there is a connection between the headcutters and local research facilities built by foreigners, most likely immersion. Here we are talking about abductions and human experimentation, just like many other UFO cases. The interesting thing is that this topic was presented as part of various problems that, according to its inhabitants, afflict their communities, such as, for example, the fact that research and/or large projects are being carried out, the Decameron Hotel, the delivery of the island from the Micos to the hotel chain, the BOA Bioobservatory project and the hydraulic installation project in Leticia, in the settlements, or in their vicinity, without prior consultation and agreement. This relationship between headcutters, research, and large projects was also stated to me on rare occasions. The author talks about what the word gringo means for the locals and their culture. She explains it means more than white man or a foreigner.
There are 3 types of beings that can be headcutters: the gringos, headcutters par excellence, and top bosses; the non-gringo whites, allies who work with the gringos; and the indigenous people, workers who work for the gringos. Let's dwell on each of them, looking at some examples and exploring a little what defines them. Gringos. The relationship between cutterheads and gringo is the most common. But what is the gringo? Where did he come from? And what defines it from the Ticuna tradition? In the first instance, as Goulard, 1998, said, gringos, like mestizos, belong to the category of whites, Corigu, although on some occasions I hear them referred to as gringosgu. All of them are made to belong to the Woka, cow clan, and are included in the Ticuna origin myth, thus being assimilated, argues Goulard, to the category of humans, which, Together with the Taikana category and that of visible and invisible non-humans, they would make up the supra category of living beings that within the Taikana cosmology inhabit the same Earth within differentiated spaces.
Could the gringos head cutters be working with non-humans who actually need the body parts for their own purposes? Maybe, considering that the organs they take are not usually used for medical transplantations. The Takuna origin myth could be talking about beings who inhabit our planet but are on a different plane of existence, like all the other mythologies in the world. Another important point in the research is the local people who work for the head cutters and help them in their horrible deeds by taking the heads and organs of their countrymen. In other circumstances, as we have already seen in the case of the gringo researchers, the work that these people do is not understood. It is not understood what kind of activity this is, such as, for example, a man to whom Gabriela referred, who manages a small tourist hostel with the help of some young indigenous people who at the same time live there with him. Sometimes gringos come to this shelter, a reason to start being suspicious, because it is believed that they do their strange business there, and from there he gets those rumors about him. But as Gabriela told me very clearly, the most suspicious thing is that this man gives food and sleep for free, and sometimes gifts to the boys who live with him. A task that is not very comprehensible, unless it has its obscure interests. According to Gabriela, the boys he lives with are under his power. He gives them shoes, gives them work, which, in part, consists of them looking for the heads of their countrymen. It is believed that there are indigenous people working with the gringos that cut heads. They are hired as their workers to do these activities, giving them all the devices and a good amount of silver. Or in other cases, as commented, they are deceived, promising some kind of payment for the performance of any work, and then, already hooked, they tell them what is the true work they must do. Some say that people escape, but in other cases, as at the time of the mafia, they are killed. The locals also mention the reason why the government is not doing anything about that problem. As Gabriela expressed it to me, it is incomprehensible that one person gives gifts to another without being looking for something in return. If they give you tanks, graders, and ovens, he told me, it's because the government has already made a deal. It's indebted to the rich countries so that they can get what they want out of it. Those were the most notable parts of the master thesis research by Salima Cure Valdivieso. Those things have been happening since the 80s, and the case from Peru 2023 is the same. It's a pity those local people are abused like that, and someone should do something about it. Another very interesting quote I found related to the topic is from Jack Valley's book Forbidden Science 4, Spring Hill, Thursday the 26th of March, 1992. I have secured a document confirming that the CIA simulated UFO abductions in Latin America, Brazil, and Argentina as psychological warfare experiments. On Tuesday, aerospace researcher Morvan Salez met me in Burbank. I gave him the Fleximage digital tapes of the Costa Rica photographs before going to dinner in Hollywood with Bob Weiss and Tracy, who told us that the abduction miniseries had run into problems. John Mack insists the aliens are good guys who came to save us, while the plot takes a negative twist in Hopkins's sadomasochistic mindset. They are on unfriendly terms. Now Aimé Michel writes of the death of Yves Rocard, father of the French A-bomb. There are many other researchers who have come to the same conclusions. For further investigation, you can check out the movie UFOs and NATO, the human mutilation cover-up. This is the end of part 3 of this research. Hope you found it helpful, and if you appreciate the effort, please consider subscribing so you can help the channel.